Coming to you live from the Business RadioX studio, it's Franchise Marketing Radio, brought to you by IDS, an award-winning digital marketing agency that delivers integrated marketing solutions for franchisors, franchisees, and franchise development teams. Learn why over 75 brands depend on IDS's team of dedicated marketers and client service professionals to deliver a strong ROI on their marketing investment. Go to idsfranchisemarketing.com for a complimentary digital audit and consultation.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Franchise Marketing Radio. I'm your host, Rob Ganley, and I have a guest with me today, and I'd like to say it's truly an American brand, an American icon. I have Paul Martino. He's the president and COO of A&W Restaurants. So, Paul, welcome to the show, and thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
You got it. So, tell me a little bit. Obviously, this is a brand I think anyone would probably recognize in America and abroad, really. But tell us a little bit about, how you wound up here. And I know you've had a long career, but tell us your story in this business.
Sure. Well, I started in the restaurant business out in Southern California a very long time ago. And my dad was in the military. He's a retired general in the Air Force. And I come from a family of 8 children, and I was the oldest. And when I got to, I guess, about 13 years old, my dad said, "Time for you to get out in the workplace." And so I went to work as a busboy in a restaurant out in Southern California that I could ride my bike to. Started as a dishwasher, worked as a cook, and worked in the restaurant business all through junior high and then high school and then through college. And once I graduated from college, I was working for an Applebee's type restaurant out in Southern California and went to work as a restaurant manager and worked for a fair number of brands, mostly in casual dining. And then in the early 90s, I was looking to get out of single unit management, multi-unit management, and went to work for A&W, I think in 1991, as a district supervisor out in Southern California. At that time, I managed 15 restaurants out there, many of them in malls. And in 1996, I was promoted to VP of company operations. And at that point in time, the headquarters was in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So I had 2 small children and a wife who lived and breathed the California sunshine. And we moved from sunny Southern California, where no one had seen snow or anything less than 50 degrees, to Minneapolis, Minnesota. And that was not a pleasant transition, I will tell you that. From there, the headquarters moved to Detroit. So we jumped out of the frying pan right into the fire. And then from there, moved to Lexington, Kentucky. And we've been there ever since. I left the brand for a short period of time when Yum acquired the brand in the early 2000s. And then I got a call from our current CEO, Kevin Basner, in 2011 that a group of franchise partners were interested in buying back the brand from Yum when Yum decided to divest the small brand. And I came back to A&W where my heart was in 2011, and I've been here ever since. And it's been a great run. So that's a little bit about me.
That's a heck of an unpacking, and I appreciate that. I picked up on something real early in that my dad was, did you say, what was his rank in the Air Force?
General in the Air Force.
Okay. An Air Force general. I'm in Colorado Springs, not far from the academy. I could just tell you the caliber of people associated with the Air Force, right? That's one thing. That's one thing I picked up on, right? So you had that as a dad. Then you said I was the oldest of 8. So that almost becomes your number 3 in the parenting triangle, right? So a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, no kidding. My dad did 3 tours of Vietnam.
Wow.
Back in the day. And my dad passed 4 years ago. And the absolute most incredible man you'd ever meet. He left the military and went to work as executive vice chancellor of the University of Riverside after he left. And just an unbelievable man, a great role model for me and for thousands, I would assume. I wanted nothing to do with the military, though, I could tell you that.
Oh yeah. Not as a kid, especially, right?
No doubt.
You can look back and say, well, that did instill some things in me that I think might have been handy. You know?
Absolutely.
So that's pretty cool. Well, tell me a little bit about one of the questions I always like to zero in on. It's a marketing program. So with such an iconic brand, we kind of joked when we first talked, when I first met you earlier, about how, it's one of those brands where you just see it. And if we talked about how sometimes you get stopped in airports or different places if you got your logo on, and it's like people want to talk to you because it's like A&W, that's just such a cool thing. I love root beer. My kids love it. I have stories about it. But tell me a little bit about how a brand like that translates for a franchise investor or owner or a franchisee. What, that must be powerful, right? To have that behind you, and tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I think that when we talk to prospective franchise partners, the first thing that comes up is a love for the brand. That's what brought them to the brand. And really, it's almost, you would think it would be that the unit economics would be first, but that almost comes secondary to everybody has a story. Talking to a prospective franchisee just a couple of days ago, I mean, they're talking about their grandma and their grandma taking them for root beer floats if they were good when they were at her house. And everybody has a story. So that passion for the brand really is one of the number one motivators that bring folks to us. And then it's like, well, how can I get on this ship? And what happens ultimately is, they start to look at the unit economics, which is very important. Then they start talking to some of our franchise partners, and so many of them are second and third and now fourth generation franchise partners that my great grandpa started this in the 50s, and we've just continued to carry the torch. And that's very, very powerful, very, very powerful, and a brand that's been around for 104 years. That's seen a whole lot of ups and a whole bunch of downs, but we, continue to prevail in a marketplace where everybody wants to talk about the latest and greatest that's out there. So,
yeah. Your business model is just a down home. We all love it. Kind of, it's good food, good soda, all that. So, tell me a little bit. You had mentioned that, and I had learned about this as well, about how your brand was part of a larger group, and then then it got bought by a larger group, and then you divested from that, and now it's is it a public company or is it company owned?
Privately held, and we're privately held with our franchise partners as our shareholders. So a very unique, very unique dynamic there. I get a chance to talk on some panels and I talk at some of my constituents out there in the world. And I talk to a Wendy's guy or a McDonald's guy, and I'm like going, yeah, we're owned by our franchise partners. And the first thing they say is, like, how does that work? And I can't imagine that it would work for anybody but us and a brand that's been around, as long as we have. We have a franchise advisory board that represent our ownership, and we sit around a table 4 times a year, and we talk about everything from standards to marketing to limited time offers to anything under the sun. And we lock arms together with that group and make decisions. So they represent our franchise community, which is very, very unique. It's not always, it doesn't always go swimmingly. But we almost always walk away with a one team approach. This is what's good for the brand. And we have folks on that franchise advisory board. There are a fair number of single unit operators. When they leave that meeting, they're working the cash register at their restaurant. And then there's a fair number of folks that are multi-unit operators that have a different vision. So we've got a mix of both. And quite honestly, that resonates with franchise partners our prospective franchise partners, wait, I get a say in how this works. And they really do. Each one of our franchise partners has a representative on that board. And I know probably many franchisors say this, but we really listen to the voice of our consumers. We have to. They own us. So it's very unique. How many pickles go on a hamburger? We can't make that decision corporately. We have to run that by our franchise advisory board. It's in their it's not only in their contract, but they're part of the ownership structure. So it's very unique.
Yeah, it's extreme. I'm thinking to myself, it's like the board of directors. It's like they're the boss, and it's almost like when you were speaking earlier. There is no real way. I mean, sure, it doesn't always go swimmingly, as you say, but there has to be, no matter what, there has to be, in the end result, everybody is affected, right? Like you can't cut your nose off to spite your face. It's eventually you got to come to an agreement because everybody's affected. Everybody's in it together. It affects everybody. So that's amazing.
Yeah, we talk about one very simple premise, and that's how can we week in, week out build profitable same-store sales. And every person in our company offices here, in our one team, and our headquarters here, are bonused and on that simple number. Can we grow year in and year out our profitable top line sales? And we put profitable in that same store sales numbers because so many of these franchisors, and rightly so, are about building the top line, and many times it's at the result is not necessarily helping the bottom line profitability of the restaurant.
Right.
The dollar menu, I'm pretty sure, has very thin margins attached to it. So we build profitable same-store sales. And over our 11 years, if you were a franchisor in 2012 when we acquired the brand, and you have that same restaurant now, you've seen about a 68% increase in your sales, which is unheard of in the industry. And that's some hard work from our franchise partners, our franchise advisory boards, to get us to that end.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about that. So you have a lot of locations. What are you up to now in terms of just total locations?
We're in the high 500s, 560, 550, somewhere around that.
Gotcha.
And that's domestically. We have another 400 plus in Southeast Asia.
Gotcha. So for you guys, the other factor you look at is resell, right? Like being able to resell existing locations, and obviously, I mean, is that a metric you're also looking at, or is there a lot of I guess blue ocean or a lot of territory still to be had? I would think. I mean,
absolutely. And we were really very well positioned to start some real expansion right before COVID hit. And then things just shut down. When we acquired the brand in 2012 from Yum had a very different strategy for the years that they had it, and that was all about co-branding. How can you put two brands under one roof and drive top-line sales at many times at the expense of the bottom line? So we had to unravel that a bit when we acquired the business at the end of 2012, the end of 2011, beginning of 2012. And for the first 4 or 5 years, we focused on our existing base. Our CEO, Kevin Basser, and I visited about 220 restaurants in the first 2 years. And just what's happening out there? What can we do? How can we make things better? We after that divestiture from Yum. And we didn't look at any growth at all for the first 4 or 5 years, stabilizing the brand, getting on a track to grow sales, get some confidence in the franchise community. And then we very, very slowly started looking at growing. We need to grow. We need to continue to get more locations out there. And to your point, a lot of green space out there. We were very, very well positioned. I think we had 30 plus agreements in place when COVID hit, and everything stopped. And it wasn't until really the end of last year where it started to pick up again. So we've got probably 35 agreements in place right now and growing every day. So we're we're very excited about our growth potential, but because we need to grow. We need to grow. We need to grow more locations out there, and I think we're well positioned to do that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I talk to a lot of franchise brands, and I don't know any like you where it's company owned, it's franchisee owned, and you're a franchisee. I mean, you get both. You get the best of both worlds, right? That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I would think, really, if it were me, like, I mean, you have any sales jobs over there? I might come over and talk about it, because to me, it would probably not be a difficult brand to scale, right? But you position it where we got to do it right. We're going to take our time, but it sounds like you're ready to kind of put your foot on the gas a little, and you got the story. I mean, man.
Yeah, I think so. I think we have a motto around here, and that's that we'd rather have open one restaurant that's open for 50 years than open 50 restaurants that are open for 1 year. So we're very, very diligent about our approach to expansion, and we've made some missteps like everybody does. And it's still a fairly significant investment when there's a lot of low entry franchises out there. So to say that it's an easy sell, I'm not sure that that's necessarily the case, but we definitely have a story to tell. And for the right franchise partner that wants a long-term, a long-term business to be in, we have a pretty good message to sell.
All right, I hear you. I agree. So speaking of that, when you look at the local owner, you have this iconic brand that many people resonate with, right? Have history and stories. And is there, through your marketing, just through the way you launch a business locally, is there a connection to the community? Do you work through different programs just so that the business can kind of connect with the people around it, because it just feels like such a family thing almost, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
How does that play in, I guess?
Well, it's interesting that you asked that, because our marketing fund structure is such that all but 0.5% of their marketing dollars goes back to the franchise partner. So they can invest their marketing dollars, unlike a McDonald's or a Burger King. They can invest almost all of their required marketing funds back in their marketplace. So whether that be local sports teams, local community events, whatever that might be, they have the ability to invest their marketing dollars in their marketplace. We just opened up a restaurant in Altoona, Wisconsin, and we opened up January. I understand that it's pretty cold in Wisconsin in January. I'm told, I could be wrong, but our franchise partner opened up there, very, very invested in the community. And she blew the doors off of any record that was that was in place for an opening week, an opening 2 weeks, and an opening month. Just blew right by every record that we had. And I believe that a lot of that has to do with that connection to the local community. We have an iconic brand, but we got to connect with the local community. And we've done well in marketplaces, in rural marketplaces, where it's a marketplace that lends itself to that. You're not going to go to LA and be able to ingratiate yourself in that local marketplace. It's just impossible. Trust me, I grew up close to there. But in Spirit Lake, Iowa, that franchise partner probably knows a good part of that community and can ingratiate themselves in that community and spend their marketing dollars in that community. That's very important to what we consider one of our strengths.
Yeah, no doubt. That's what I just had that feeling. So you had mentioned earlier about the franchise advisory board. Obviously, that's an important meeting that you do, and an important group of people, and it's really representation of all the ideas throughout the network, and the important thing. So you also mentioned profitability is something you take very seriously. You really focus there. Is there one key thing or anything over the recent years that this group has really looked at and said, we've got to do that? That's where we focus to really drive profitability. If there's one thing or even a couple of things that you would say.
Well, I think you're talking about our that community going through the last couple, 2-3 years of COVID.
Yeah.
And I think what our community learned very, very quickly was the value of execution at the drive-thru. And how we can serve continued quality is our long-term value proposition. We can't compete with the McDonald's 2-for-1s. We can't compete there. So we have to invest in our community, and we have to be the best at what we can be in that community. And I think our franchise partners learned a couple things. They learned the value of our supply chain because when we divested from Yum, we remained in their co-op. So our franchise partners have the buying power of Taco Bell, Pizza, and KFC in that co-op. Very, very important, especially during COVID when you couldn't get napkins. Sometimes you couldn't get straws. Sometimes you couldn't get wrap for your hamburgers, burger patties, chicken. All of those things where that supply chain with many brands really struggled. We had the strength of that co-op behind us. So how they could execute best at the drive-thru was very important over the last couple of years, and how they could maximize profitability through that. I mean, you close the dining rooms, you're doing most of your business. We saw a record-breaking year in 2020, and we broke that record again in 2021 because we had, we were one of the brands that had drive-thrus. So I think that was key, and continuing to leverage that quality piece. We just recently went through a menu optimization project that we're just on the tail end of, where we looked at our menu boards, and how can we optimize what we do? We feel like we have the best chicken tenders out there in the marketplace. How can we highlight them on our menu boards? Same thing with our double burgers. We feel like we have a great product there. So how can we best put that face forward on our menu boards? And it's been very, very successful. So we continue to do that. Again, we have a 12-person advisory council. We have four on our executive advisory committee. We meet with those 4 folks once a week, every Monday, 11 o'clock for an hour. And we talk about, hey, Johnny in Franksville, Wisconsin had a problem with his delivery. We're having problem with pickles, whatever the case may be. We talk about that every week. And again, staying very, very connected with our franchise community. Every franchise community has folks that feel like their franchisor isn't doing everything that we can. But not every franchisor has a voice. Our franchisee has a voice, and our franchisees have a voice. I mean, we got a letter from one of our franchisees up in Oregon that said they were unhappy with our current LTO, and it was confusing for her customers. And we brought that in front of our franchise advisory board. Let's talk about this. So, I mean, that's just how we work. It would not work I've worked with other brands before, would not work. It just happens to work with us.
Even if they were willing, it would take too long. It wouldn't be relevant by the time amazing. So COVID, you mentioned that clearly, I say this all the time. And when we were interviewing folks back then, it was very interesting to see how everybody was reacting to that. And obviously some got hit harder. Certainly you did. Not being, I guess, an essential business, right? But you had the ability to stay in business and have the drive-through, and probably people preferred it because in that sense. Was there a technical or technology innovation that you had to look at, or anything additional, or you were kind of ready to go and it was more?
I think we weren't really positioned well in the whole Skype arena as it related to how we did business on a day-to-day basis. Again, you've got a fair number of our franchise partners that have been around forever. Some of them are slow to adopt technology, but certainly the big winner in COVID was technology. Let's face it. I mean, the Amazons of the world, the delivery platforms, everybody benefited from the fact that that section of the population that wanted to have nothing to do with online ordering our online delivery. Now we're forced to do it. They had to learn it. And so now it's like, hey, this is pretty easy. So, they had to adopt it. Now it's part of their day to day. I think the big thing that we did during COVID that kind of helped us and our franchise partners breathe a little easier. Well, again, front facing, we held weekly meetings with our CEO, head front and center. This is what's happening. This is how you apply for, the loans that were out there. This is how you handle some of the supply chain challenges. This is what you can expect to be out of. This is what you can expect here, there, and everywhere. So I think that was the big thing. And we had to bring our franchise partners along to figure out how to work with simple technology, a Skype call or a Teams call or whatever. But it was, again, it's really we're a very high touch business. And, I was just got off the phone with Kevin, and he had just got a call from one of our new franchise partners on his cell phone. I mean, you think the McDonald's CEO takes a call from a brand new franchisee? I doubt it.
No, I don't think so. But
that one team approach, and I get calls from our franchise partners every day, all the time. And I know many of them, if not most of them, by on a first name basis.
Yeah. I mean, what you just said is mind blowing in a sense. I know in some worlds, getting a hold of a guy like you would cost a lot of money just for an hour. So, you know what I mean? They getting, someone of your level and your experience, right? If I can tap into that as a business owner, and maybe a newer business owner, right? Someone who has not been in the restaurant world for 40 years or in franchise world. So that's an amazing resource for your franchisees.
Yeah.
So with that being said, so when you first launch a local business, it sounds like community involvement, obviously the brand is very well known, community involvement, a good launch, right? Letting everybody know ahead of time. Is there any other key ingredients that you have found that you're successful? Obviously location matters, right? Which you're probably really good at knowing that, but is there any other key marketing element or things that you really key in on to help them get going or even scaling?
I think that one of the most important things in a launch is how you execute for the first 30 days. And, you're going to get a lot of interest in a new restaurant. And I don't know how often you go to new restaurants. We have a 30-day rule in my house that you don't visit a brand new restaurant for the first 30 days. But you're going to get a lot of folks that line up that hey, there's an icon coming to our town. Let's go check it out. So that execution is going to tell you whether or not those folks will return. A fair number of them won't. They're just there because they remember A&W from years ago. But if you can execute well and get that customer, or that consumer, that guest to come back, that's super important. And we have continued to increase the amount of front-end training time, and most specifically, our people on site to help over the last 5 or 6 years. We started with 5 days, 7 days, 10 days, and we keep increasing that so that we can help those franchise partners execute those first and make the best first impression that they can. Yeah. No matter how well ingrained you are in the community, let's face it, if John over at the bank that you happen to know by first name comes in, has a horrible experience, he may or may not share that with you. He just won't come back. Yeah. He'll find another place to go. So I think execution is key, especially in small communities, because while social media has really evolved over the last 10 years in terms of sharing experiences, or somebody that I know comes and I go out to dinner with them, they say, hey, make sure you don't go there. All the social media in the world is not going to convince me to go if my friend says I shouldn't go. Right? Yeah,
no doubt. Yeah, it's very much marketing in a sense for a business like yours is just by example almost, right?
Yeah.
Give them what they expect, do it well, and they're going to keep coming back and tell their friends, and that's a powerful marketing effect right there.
Absolutely.
Well, listen, I appreciate your time today. I'd like to wrap the call up by just asking you, is there one thing that you're still, you kind of manage your team by, or it gets you up in the morning and, you kind of, it's a principle or an idea, something that you might think might help the audience. Anything you want to leave with the audience?
Well, so my youngest daughter is a influencer, and she lives in New York City, unbelievably successful. I mean, I boggle at the amount of money that she makes at 31 years old. And she was recently interviewed on Rachel Ray. I say recently, I don't know, in the last year or so. And Rachel Ray asked her if there was one thing that your parents taught you when you were growing up that you've held with you. And I was watching this and I had no idea what she was going to say. And I said, I wonder what brilliant thing came out of my mouth. But she said, she started with, well, my dad always told me when I was growing up something that's kept with me all my life. And I wonder what brilliant thing I said. I can't wait. And she said, be nice to everyone. And she said, and I've kept that with me. And so our approach is one team. We're all on the same team. We talk about it all the time. We have a convention next week. That's the title of it is One Team. And it's like, we're all on the same team. Or our franchise partners own us, but more importantly, they write our paychecks. So we're all one team. So we have to, some people we get along with better than others. But at the end of the day, be nice to everyone. We're all on the same team. So that's really it's a simple message, but it makes a lot of sense, especially in an environment like we find ourselves in today, where everybody seems to have a problem with somebody else. So we can all learn to just be nice to each other. And
I think it's amazing.
Your political beliefs, your religious beliefs, whatever that might be, doesn't mean you can't be nice. So one team is what we preach.
We're all humans, then we're all Americans, then we're all maybe on the A&W team, but that works better. Life works better, right?
Absolutely.
That must have been an interesting reaction for you. I think that's an amazing answer.
It was.
That's a very sweet answer.
But it was. I was telling my wife. I said, "Did you see here?" She goes, "No, I didn't." So we're playing it, and I paused it. I go, "What do you think I was going to say?" She goes, "No telling what's going to come out of her mouth of what came out of your mouth." I go, "Well, it was brilliant. I'll tell you that."
Yeah, the simplest things in life really are. So I appreciate you sharing that. That's why I like to ask it, because I always get really good ones, and that'll stay with me. That'll stay with me. I appreciate it, Paul. Is there a website where some potential interested maybe new partners could go and learn more?
I bet you if you type A&W, you'll find it instantaneously. We're right at the top of the search list. We have our public-facing website, and then that leads you right to our franchising website, or vice versa.
Right.
And we get unbelievable amount of action on our consumer-facing website for sure.
Yeah. Gotcha. All right. Cool. I appreciate it. Again, it was great having you on.
Absolutely. Great talking to you.
You got it.
All right.
Bye for now.
Take care, man. Thanks.